Welcome to the Haiku Journey interview series where haiku poets from around the world share their writing journeys. I am your host Zoe Grant, a 10-year-old haiku poet from New Zealand. Today is the 6th of April 2024 and my guest is Don Baird from America. Don Baird is a simple man pursuing a simple life in a complex world. He has written 11 engaging books, including subjects of poetry such haiku, philosophy, and God. He is a pastor, a 2009 Masters Hall of Fame martial artist, musician, and poet. Don is also an author who has won numerous haiku competitions, such as the first place of the Touchstones Award. He is the owner and co-founder of the Living Haiku Anthology, as well as the Under the Basho online journal. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Very well done.
So what inspired you to become a haiku poet?
I'm so old I actually can't remember. It's maybe martial arts because it might be two sides. When I was really young, like you, I was writing poetry, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and it wasn't any real form. I just wrote down things that were on my mind, and they were poetic in a way. And I was doing that since I was old enough to write, just scribbling little poetry things. Um, but martial arts is, it's an art, martial art, and people forget that it's an art, that it's a thing like music, it's a thing like painting, it's a thing like writing poetry, and so in martial arts, there's people that just fight so they can punch each other and hurt each other and be victorious, be all big and strong, right? And then there's the martial artists that train it for the dignity of the art, where there's an honor and you train a very, very high level skill of self-defense, let's say, and the use of different kinds of weapons. And then they develop, uh, new ways to use the weapons or new ways. That's the art part. And martial arts is kind of like a physical language. If that person comes in and says, "Hi, how are you?" You go, "I'm just fine. How are you?" It has to be that natural. It's like when you press middle C on the piano, a second later, right then, boom, you hear middle C in your head. It's instant. And so martial arts has to be like that. When they push a button, you have to respond. You're the piano, they're playing the music. And in this case, the music knocks them out. It doesn't actually play Mozart. So that's a little bit there. But underneath all of that is this beautiful, beautiful depth of philosophy and thousands of books and writings by martial artists who are really mindful and introspective. And so in that, when you look at Japan and its take on martial arts, uh, their no theater, their haiku, it all has a deep base, a philosophical base, martial arts, music, their theater, and writing. And so naturally, if you're in a real martial art and you're being exposed to real principles, you're going to be exposed to haiku. You'll have to. It's part of a culture. And so through martial arts and through my studies of martial artists for my whole life, I've been a historian and a practitioner both. I came across haiku. Thing is, I like to philosophize in a lot of words. We can go on all night, not instead of 10 minutes. However, when I write or read, I only want to read like the fewest words possible and get the point, and I want to write the fewest words possible to get the point. So haiku was perfect.
I know that you are also a musician. Does it help with your poetry writing?
Um, I think the way it develops the mind, poetry is musical and it has rhythm, it has beats, right? And I think that they music and poetry and other things stimulate the mind in those areas. So like I perform music, but I also compose it and historically. And I compose haiku. And when Dr. Richard Gilbert, a friend of mine, comes over from Japan, then we perform it. So, it can both of them are real similar. And by the way, they come from pretty much the same part of the brain, that creative side. Uh, the side you dream, you have dreams and you have aspirations and and you have creativity. You want to write haiku. Something triggers you to write haiku. So, um, music is a trigger to your feelings. You can be feeling one way and then listen to some music and it can change the mood you're in. You know, uh, if you listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, last movement, Schiller's Ode to Joy. Wow, it's powerful, it's heavy, it's almost frightening. It's just bum, 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 and so big, right? And so that's going to change you somehow. And then suddenly you hear this little this little nocturne from Chopin or something. It seems nimble and beautiful. So those things inspire you. And so music has always been a source of my inspiration and poetry I write other poetry besides haiku, but uh, all of my poetry, all of my writings of books, in a way, they're coming from the past and the same source of passion that music builds on. And so I think it helps me a lot. In a direct way, I can't tell you, well, because that music wrote this poem. It'd be more like this. The poem I wrote the music. Because poetry really makes me think in terms of music. I read something, I get all kinds of images, and I'm ready to. I don't even hardly play piano, but I'm ready to play something, or write something. I think they're very connected.
What do you think haiku is all about and why we should write it?
I think it's a way to cause us to notice the things we might not otherwise notice. It's the unnoticeable things, or to cherish the things you notice that you didn't used to cherish. So, for example, you're going along, and if you have your haiku mind on, like I put my hat on, so I put my haiku mind on, and I go walking around, suddenly I notice all kinds of things on this earth that are so beautiful, from a little teeny flower you might miss because there's lots of big ones, or a little snail hanging on a leaf somewhere, and you go like, "What's he doing on a leaf?" And then, or you turn around and you go like, "Wow, that's an eclipse." That's a really big deal. I think it is. I think it is a way to cause us to notice the comings and goings of the things in the universe and on Earth. And it's really true because Zoka being the energy behind all of it, right? It's kind of like a life force. It's the force of movement, and haiku can actually translate. It can bring that force of movement into words. And koto in Japanese, it's the coming and going. So one is the spark of life and the energetic of life, and the other is the constant, leaves come out now, and in another time they go into the ground and become mulch. And then leaves come out again and they go into the ground and be mulch. So what we have is a constant coming and going of things in the universe. And that's what haiku is about, us to capture that. Um, and to take a minute and notice, to slow our lives down and to think about something besides, God, how do I feed the kids? I got to go to school. I got to pass my class. I got to get good grades. I've got this person I got to interview. I better be ready for it. It's just this on and on and on and on. And haikus stop you in your tracks, causes you to admire something, or to be, as I wrote in one of my articles, to be in awe of something. See, Basho didn't have an aha. that was never true. I don't believe that. Basho was in awe. And so that's why he wrote. And so haiku gives us the idea of haiku gives us a chance to stop and be in awe of something and to write it down in this special little form that's easy to read, quick to remember.
Can you tell us about your books and the journals you edit?
Yes, the journals I edit, it's the Living Haiku Anthology, and the other one's called Under the Basho Anthology. The Living Haiku Anthology is kind of like a library of some of the finest poets in the world that write haiku. And I don't know, maybe we have 300 to 500 poets that we represent, 15 to 20,000 poems or more. I lost track. There's a lot. Anybody that's being published out there, we have found, and there we represent them. Uh, if they've won a match or a tournament or something like that, we eventually find them, and then we go, "You should be in the Living Haiku Anthology," because there should be and is a storehouse of all the prominent poets writing haiku in the world in one place. And so if you go to Living Haiku Anthology, you can look up their name and see what their poetry is like. And so Hansha, Stephen Bailey, we call him Hansha sometimes. He and I were talking in 2013. I just had a bleed in the brain, in the middle of my brain, and I was paralyzed. And it was very serious, and they kind of thought I might not make this. And I left the hospital. I couldn't really walk. It was a pretty tough time. And I got a hold of Hansha and I said, I'm going to be sitting around a lot right now because I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything. And I have this idea about this living haiku anthology. And he goes, well, that's really funny, Don, because I've been thinking about something like that as well. And I said, well, we're a perfect team. I'll go out and get them, and you be the webmaster, and the two of us would be a perfect partnership. And so that's how that started. Um, the goal was to centralize the finest haiku poets we could find, and we want them there. And we also want ones that are young and coming up, and we want to represent them. And so it's going to be really for anybody. We have scholars that come in, like Dr. Richard Gilbert in Japan. He gets on Living Haiku Anthology all the time. He writes a lot of different books and studies, very technical writing, right? But he uses examples for his writing that come from the Living Haiku Anthology. And so then we were talking about a journal, and we both had thought about that. And next thing you know, Under the Basho is here, and it's a journal, and it's very successful, and it's unique. It's the only one, when we created it, was the only one that published the entire year. It's organic. So you can submit now, or you can submit in August, submit in September. It doesn't matter. You can submit in haiku, you can submit in haibun later, you can submit in haiga later, or all at once. If you get rejected, you're allowed to resubmit a new group, and we'll consider it. Because we want to represent poets around the world. We want to give them a place to have a voice, and we encourage them to send us stuff. I'll help edit it. If I write them back, say, I like some of this, but it really does need an edit. I'm just being honest. If you say yes, I'll work with you, and when your poem is ready, I'll publish it. So I wanted something for all the poets to enjoy. The books, well, I just finished one that is called From Breath to Words. I don't know if that's backwards to you.
No,
Can you read it, or is it backwards?
that's fine.
Yeah. So that's from breath to words. And they call haiku the one breath poem, right? So from breath to words. And it's a storyline haiku book. It's called A Sojourn in Haiku, Little Journey in Haiku. And it should be really read just like almost one setting, where it takes you down a storyline, but you don't really know what it is. You have to read the whole thing and ponder it, and you begin to see some things that recur, a storyline that's in there, and it's kind of interesting. And it has uh, it'll have, oh, that's a crazy one. Let me get one that's more normal. Uh, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a type of graffiti that I photographed. So as the story is being told, there's also graffiti photographs that match the story and help tell the story too. And the first poem in there is Windowsill, the fading footprint of a pink giraffe. And somebody's gonna just like, what is this old man? He must be 77 years old and he must be senile or crazy, you know? But uh, not at all. It begins in innocence, and it begins in children playing, and it begins with them having toys. And some of the toys were zoo animals, and the pink giraffe was set on the windowsill, and that's the story behind it. But I'm not going to just say that. I'm not going to write it out like a haiku. You know, you're going to have to fantasize in your mind. How could a pink giraffe be standing on a windowsill in his house? Well, it has to be a toy. Why would they have a toy? They must have a child. So all through the book, you can figure out what I'm saying. It's easy enough. But I wanted to start it very innocent and very light. And it does lead you through some times that are more challenging and more heart and more mature like that. So yeah, I've written 11 books, from martial arts to philosophy to God. I'm a pastor at 3 churches and non-denominational. So I pretty much preach to anybody. But we have churches out here I preach to on a regular basis. And so I wrote 2 books for them. And The Poetry of God, and I think the other one is called Divine Promises. So one's called The Poetry of God, and the other one's Divine Promises. And in the Bible, there are statements that are just made outright that, you know, that's God's promise to people who believe in God. And so I don't write it I just write it to help people and draw people to God. Maybe they're not really in that. Maybe they have a different belief. That's all right. We can learn from each other's beliefs. No harm, no foul. Yeah.
You've won a lot of haiku competitions. What do you think makes a good haiku?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I'm not sure. I'll tell you that you're probably expecting to hear an actual answer. I've thought about that before when I first read this today a little bit. It's like, you know, what makes a good haiku? And everybody, all my friends, Jim Cation, Richard Gilbert, and Charlie Trumbull, they're all going to have, an answer for this. But I'm not sure what makes a good haiku, but I recognize it when it happens. Because so many times I start off in a haiku and I'm just like, oh my gosh, just throw it away. I can't stand it. But I put it aside and I'll look at it a few days later and I'll see if I can make an edit to save its life. And then on the other hand, I write something and I go like, well, wait a minute. I think that has something to it that catches something. So you're wondering what makes a good haiku. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'm splitting hairs. I don't know how you really make one on purpose, but I do know when I'm trailing a good one, and I go like, this is close. This could work, and some of it is eliminating clutter. So I have this one little thing. So if you go to AI, artificial intelligence, which I'm going to use as an example today, right? Because I think this just really works so well. And which one do I want to look at? So over here, we have a thing I put into AI as an AI offering. It was priest, shame concealed deep, cold evening, fading moon weeps, secrets forever kept, those are the kind of some of the keywords that I put into this AI haiku writer. And so then the artificial brain comes out, and I call it a hybrid haiku. I did an article on this and under the Basho. You can read it over there. And so my offering was that, and then I see that's what I received from the artificial intelligence. All of that. So my actual criteria was a priest hides in shame, cold, evening, and fading moon. That's what I put in there. That's what I saw. I'm out walking on a trail, and we're taking hints from nature. We're taking hints from wherever we are, and we're going to get a fragment and a phrase I like that as a basis, where you have two parts juxtaposed against one part, and that creates a pretty decent haiku most of the time. There's other ways to write them. And so priest hides his shame, cold evening, it's fading moon. And I got this whole thing back. It's priest shame, concealed deep, cold evening, fading moon weeps, secrets forever keep. And so one thing that makes a lousy haiku, see, the way to get a good one is to trim away the lousy one. So you go like, that's way too many words. I can't stand it anymore. So then you might go priests, shame, and stop. Fading moon weeps, just that, stop, just don't talk anymore. Forever keep or forever kept. So, I'm editing this one right now from my brain, just say, so editing, if you want to know what makes a great haiku, is write it in too many words in a way, begin to, write what you saw in too many words, bring out the words you really need, throw away the words you don't need, keep a trash can nearby for all those words you don't need, because you don't need most of them, and throw them away, and then you get your bare bones. And so I just kind of threw them away and gave you a little bare bones. But then the one that happened when I edited it is hidden shame. A fading moon weeps his secrets. So I saw a priest in shame. It's a cold evening with a fading moon, and he has the darkest secrets. What would you think they are? So there's something he's done in his life. And so hidden shame became the representative of the priest and applied it to everyone, not just the priest, all of us that have done a shameful thing. So hidden shame, a fading moon. The moon is losing confidence in you. The moon is fading and it's weeping, and it kind of just disappears in the horizon, leaving you with your secrets. And so that's what that's about. So what makes a good haiku is being very careful not to use too many words. Trim them down. Let the reader complete most of the haiku, 60 or 70% of haiku. It should be a dream area where you get to put in your life experience. What makes a good haiku is, I think, in general, I use one-liners. I use all these different liners, right? But the best haiku I really read, the really finest, deepest ones with wabi-sabi and makoto and kokoro, these aesthetics in Japan, are ones that are in the juxtaposed one line, two lines. They gives you opportunity to have a nice form, a good balance. It gives you opportunity to make a comparison between two things that bring about greater thinking. And that happened with Nagasaki poem I wrote. Nagasaki, that's line 1. In her belly, the sound of unopened mail. And it's a really deep, rich thing, but Nagasaki, everybody knows. So bam, your brain goes there, but you're not expecting in her belly the sound of unopened mail. And you're going like, how does that? Well, that's where the bomb hit, right? It was part of a war. Many people were killed, unopened mail, conversations that will never be had again in the future. It gives you thousands. Jim Cation did an article on this poem for me. It won a lot of tournaments, and two of his. And he was writing about his thoughts, and he goes, and in the end, I can't write completely about it. That it was so open. And when you hear this, hidden shame. A fading moon weeps his secrets. While his secrets, is he referring? Well, he can't be referring to the priest because I didn't include him. So the fading moon is weeping his secrets. Or is it the implied person? And that person is hidden shame. And instead of calling him the priest, we renamed him hidden shame. And that's what I did. That represents the priest. So the moon is weeping over the priest. And it leaves it to you to wonder, well, why, what's the shame? Or it leaves it to you to wonder, you know, what's going on? Who knows what people do, but it applies to everyone. And that's what really counts in haiku too, is when you write something that everyone can relate to and it applies to them too in their life and their life experience.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and I am looking forward to your talk as the guest speaker at the 6th International Renge Gathering next weekend.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.